Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, happy 300th episode. We are continuing our groundbreaking Meet the Independent Candidate series with another independent veteran and inspiring person who I am eager to get into all of this happening in the country and the world with. The great and powerful Nick Batter joins us on Independent Americans. Welcome, sir.
Neither great nor powerful, but thanks for having me, Paul. Happy to be here, especially on a milestone episode.
Well, it's been really fun to get to know independent candidates from all across the country. Eager to share more about your story and your race with people. But let's start, please, Nick, with the question I ask everybody. Where are you and how are you?
I'm doing great because I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, which is I'm a native of Omaha and love being here. I look forward to raising my family here.
Excellent. Now I'm looking behind you. You've got like a hard hat for folks who are watching on video. They can see a hard hat and a hazard jacket. You got a lot of stuff going on back there, man. I see a helmet, a Nebraska sign. Can you tell folks who don't know, who are you and why are you making this big leap to run for elected office?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story begins pretty humbly. I was born to a high school junior and grew up with a single mom, grew up pretty poor. It was a lean childhood, but it wasn't a sad childhood. We did what we had to do and bounced around a lot, lived in cheap apartments, and just through kind of serendipitous luck and largely because of having a great community around me, when I was starting to look at colleges and where to go, it was around the time that Harvard passed need-blind admissions, which in plain English means poor kids get to go to Harvard. And I was one of those poor kids, and I had a really good experience there. Although, like, I think a lot of people that make such a jarring transition, from going from food stamps to Harvard dining halls in pretty close succession, you feel a sense of I almost think guilt in a way. And so for me, a way to handle that is public service. And honestly, as a candidate, I think one narrative that I'm supposed to tell when I'm talking to people like you is that I'm awesome. I pulled myself up with my bootstraps. And I didn't pull myself up. My community pulled me up. And so that's the community that I'm looking to serve. That's the country that I'm looking to serve. Um, and so that's the reason that military service was important to me. Famously, during the Vietnam War, Harvard kicked ROTC off of campus. So there was no path to the military through Harvard while I was there. So I had to ride a bike across town and take a subway to go to a processing station to get in. And they were they were kind of dumbfounded that I was walking in their doors. There were options to do ROTC and stuff, and I took some military classes while I was an undergrad, but um, I enlisted and had an opportunity to commission later on. But I went through the front door like most everybody else, which was a good experience. So um, happy to talk about my service. It wasn't particularly remarkable, but it was, I did a lot of things that I enjoy and look back on. And around the same time when I was serving in the reserves, I also did nonprofit work in combat zones overseas. So I did not see any combat in uniform, but I have seen a good amount of combat in blue jeans. So
Well,
um,
you are awesome, and whether you want to share that or not, I'm going to say you're awesome, and I think folks are going to already starting to understand why. You and I have a similar story in that I remember walking into the strip mall in Amherst, Massachusetts, and saying I was there to enlist, and they thought it was Candid Camera, so they must have thought the same thing when you walked in as a Harvard student looking to enlist. So you went into the Army, and can you talk about what your specialty was in the Army and what you did during your time in service?
yeah, that's right. So I enlisted as an engineer, and then did basic training, did the initial stuff, and then had the option to earn my commission through the infantry school. So I was so came in, made it was then to an E4, and then was an officer candidate and did that whole song and dance through the infantry school, which was a fun time for someone scrawny and skinny like me, and made it through. And then I led engineers in a variety of stuff, all domestic, just here in the country doing civil works projects, which I really enjoyed. And then finally served with a reserve unit here in Nebraska and used the GI Bill to pay for law school. So I have my law degree thanks to our country.
You are a great story and a great example of why investing in young people pays off, right? For your community, for the country, and I think for our future. Hearing a GI Bill story like yours is what we hoped would happen when we worked to pass it back in 2008. So to have a conversation like this, I think is full circle. I want
Yeah.
to get into your race in a second, but before I get to that, Nick, why are you an independent? Why did you choose to run as an independent, and how do you define independent?
Yeah, so first of all, I think you'll find that there's a really strong independent spirit in Nebraska. A lot of that comes down to our state's history from a long time ago. So our unicameral, we have a unicameral. I think it's Nebraska and Guam that have unicamerals, which means we don't have two houses, um, which is unique. And the idea is that the second house is the people. And addition to that, it's nonpartisan, at least in paper. But over time, that has eroded. So in fact, there aren't everybody in the unicameral now is a partisan functionally. But that wasn't always the case. And even the Nebraska I grew up in had people like Bob Kerrey, Chuck Hagel, Ben Nelson, people that really were solutions oriented and put country above party. And so that's kind of what I grew up seeing and what I grew up admiring. And so when I saw an opportunity and a path, I live in a district that does not have a majority party and has a strong independent presence. I saw that there was a path to take our system at face value and run that way. And for me, the idea is that most of the things that I see needing to get done in my community have nothing to do with national partisan politics, have everything to do just with practical solutions. And those are the practical solutions I'm running to work for. If I am elected, I don't want to have to be making phone calls to party officials. I want to meet with my neighbors and say, it's time to get to work.
I think you're another example of kind of the true north or the beating heart of this independent movement. And I was actually going to ask you why you thought so many were coming from Nebraska, because we've seen that. You recently got the endorsement from Independent Veterans America. There were 3 people from Nebraska that got that endorsement. I've been honored to have Chuck Hagel on this show and to know him, and been honored to know Bob Kerrey and to have him as a mentor. So I think this story about Nebraska and Nebraska's independence, I think, is a bigger political story.
Yeah.
But I can't have you on without asking you to talk about what I think is maybe the most underreported national political story, which is the Senate race in your state. We've had Dan Osborne on the show. I'm going to have him back. He recently got the endorsement of IVA as well, the only Senate candidate. Polling came out this week that has him neck and neck with Deb Fischer. Can you tell us, what do you see on the ground there? Is this real? Can he win this? And what does it say about Nebraska more broadly?
Yeah, he's certainly going to win my district, and I'm proud that I've got our signs are coexisting in a whole lot of yards where I live. And so, I mean, he's putting in the work. And what's going to be really interesting, and I hope really encouraging nationwide, is that we're in a very unique race in Nebraska because we had an appointment, because we had a resignation. And so we have 2 U.S. Senate races in Nebraska. And one is a very conventional Senate race, and one is a very unconventional Senate race. So it's really an A/B test for the promise of this, and I'm sure Osborne's going to exceed a lot of the cynicism that's been thrown his way. So I'm really excited to see his results on election day. I think I'll be pulling those up before my own. I'm so eager to see how that comes out.
I've actually been encouraging folks to cover this because I think it's way below the national political radar right now. Initially, Dan had internal polling. Now there's independent polling that shows that this is real. And I think that Deb Fischer, frankly, is surprised and underestimated him. And now they're neck and neck. But let's talk about your race specifically. You're in the 13th district. You're running for the state legislature.
Yeah.
Talk about your race if you can. What's important in your community? What should folks know who are outside of Nebraska who are interested in this movement about the 13th district, and what's your plan to win?
Yeah, I like to say my district is the most Nebraskan district there is because we have everything. I've got trailer parks. There's a home with a private helipad in my district. There's urban and rural in my district. And so, which to me is really exciting. It means we have all walks of life, all types of people, people from all over the political spectrum. Although despite that diversity, we have a lot of common issues in the district. And so that's really allowed me to focus on those issues in a way that kind of cuts through all of those things and allows me not to, you know, have to do a bunch of partisan virtue signaling and send out a bunch of mail that just has, buzzwords on them, but actually get substantive on things that we can fix. So what are those? A big one in a lot of the communities is we've got a big slumlord problem. So we have, these out-of-state large entities that'll buy up homes, usually throw a disabled adult in them or a senior, and then just let the houses rot around them. At the same time, our state's cutting them really massive property tax relief checks. So I want to kick them off the rolls and,
Mm.
spread the love to people that are building quality affordable housing, which is what we need to see more of in my community. A second one is just core infrastructure. It's a safety issue. There is an intersection that I drive every day with 3 children in the back of my truck. And the expected collision rate, if you compare it to a similar intersection in a wealthier part of town, it's 51 times the injury rate. So not 50% worse, not 100% worse, 5,100% worse. But if you look at the state's plan to do anything about that, there's no fixes on the 10-year master plan. So that's got to change. And
Mm.
it's not just because it's a working class area. It's because the taxes we pay in our district that are supposed to go to trust funds to fix that get siphoned away to pet projects of politicians elsewhere in our state. So we need to keep that money in the community and make sure it's doing its job because I mean, children are getting injured. So, and that's not a partisan issue, right? That's a human issue. No one wants to get hit by a vehicle. It's just a function of being a good steward of our public resources.
Hmm. There's kind of a through line in a lot of the local races we've talked to folks about. It's like fix stuff, make stuff work, right? Like
Yeah.
make government, make the system work for regular people. You're coming in as an independent, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're running only against a Democrat, somebody named Ashley Spivey, who is not a veteran. And unless it's changed, there's no Republican in the race. So can you talk to me about how that shakes out? What should we know about your opponent, and how do people react when you knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm an independent"?
Yeah. So we have an open primary in Nebraska. So there were Republicans and Democrats. There was a Republican and Democrats in the primary. Um, and now it's down to top 2 finishers. And fortunately, I think my candidacy was only possible due to that open primary structure. And as a result of, there's not going to be letters that appear on our ballot. So it means that ideally people are electing a person. So when I knock on a door, and a lot of people don't ask what party because they know it's supposed to be a nonpartisan race, or if I do, I just say it's a nonpartisan race and I'm running as a nonpartisan. I'm taking it at face value. Here's what I believe in. Let me know if you don't like anything. And as a result, I think that I haven't had hardly any critique at all about my platform. So, which I'm proud of. I think it means people like it, even people that would, are looking for flaws in detail.
So
Um,
Nick, can you explain that? Just because I've never voted like that, right? So
yeah,
you walk in and it's just got your name. Does it say
just
your
a name.
hometown? It doesn't say your party affiliate. It just says Nick Batter and nothing else, or what does it say?
That's it. And then the order gets randomized by precinct. So in some, my name will be top, some it'll be second, but it's just a name. You're just voting for a person's name. And which I think is helpful. I mean, people are allowed to bring their phones into the polling station. Our website gets, it's the most traffic this year we had was on primary day,
Sure.
presumably of people just doing their homework at the polls, which is terrific. So it's my job to make sure I'm communicating that effectively. And, sometimes parties are just kind of an analog for values. And so people need, maybe, I don't know if they need them, but they want those handrails. And so the challenge for me, and again, my concept of my race, I'm running a purely positive campaign. I don't see this as me running against somebody. I see this as me running for things with a vision to get things done. And it's up to my neighbors to decide whose vision they like the best. So not focused on tearing anyone down or even criticizing anyone's platforms, but I have a clear vision and I'm sharing my qualifications. And that's my job. That's my job as a candidate, and that's how American democracy's supposed to work. I mean, I get tired of all of the name calling and people throwing tantrums. And ultimately, I think that the way you run a race is the way you intend to lead. And I don't want to lead as a name caller. I want to be someone that, shares a vision and is conscientious on how they're going to lead.
I can hear people in their cars and walking with their earbuds going, "Hooray!" Like this is refreshing to hear. This is what everybody wants to hear, I think. And I hope this is part of why people will support you, whether they live in Nebraska or not. This is about encouraging and supporting candidates like you to be able to do this way and win. You're a role model, you're a dad. I think you're doing it the right way. I think you're a rising star. I hope you're in the U.S. Senate or governor's mansion or something one day. But in the meantime, we do have this polarized national election that kind of sets up the framework. And I've asked this of everybody. Are you going to endorse Harris or Trump or someone else? And or are you going to disclose who you're voting for? This fall for folks that want to try to figure out where you stand on the national election?
I think it's my job to share my thoughts on things and be transparent. I'll be voting for Kamala Harris. I don't think anybody cares about having my endorsement, so I'm not not going to endorse anybody. But that's where I'll be casting my vote.
Can you talk about why? Because you're a very values driven person, and I'd love to hear more about why that's the choice you're making.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's twofold. Obviously, I wish we had a more protracted primary process with both parties. That's when I got involved in political races when I was younger, there was really crowded primaries and some stuff got really close to convention. And that's supposed to be the idea that parties really let people decide. And we haven't seen that recently. We've just kind of been told who our two candidates are going to be, and you kind of have to pick one and sometimes hold your nose and pick one. So it is what it is. But yeah, I just think, when we have somebody that has a nuclear button, I want a calm head prevailing. I wonder who I want my commander in chief to be. I'm still young enough to be drafted, and I don't want to have to leave my three children behind to, go fight an unnecessary conflict. I've been in war, and I want to make sure we have a commander in chief that respects soldiers and respects people in uniform. So that's important to me. One thing that's probably pretty important to a lot of Nebraskans is that her vice presidential choice is a native Nebraskan who seems like a pretty sensible guy. So that certainly didn't hurt. And notably, as you might see in the headlines, Nebraska, again, speaking to our uniqueness and independence, we split our electoral vote. So those of us that live in the Omaha area, can actually give an electoral vote either way, and we have in the past, which I'm really proud of. I think that's something worth preserving.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Yeah.
for being a calm head. I mean, this is why whoever wins in November should call you up and ask you to be involved. But to that point, if you don't win, what are you going to do? I mean, is there any polling right now? How do you know how you stand right now in such a local election? I mean, I guess you could look at the ranked choice voting results, but how do you assess where you are in this election, and what are you going to do if you don't win?
Yeah. So yeah, we have no idea where we are. Generally, we we have a healthy campaign. We've got yard signs up. I was the first place finisher in the primary. The third place finisher has endorsed me. So those are higher information voters who vote in primaries, right? But we'll have a
Is
lot of
that a
new.
Republican or a Democrat or an independent, the third place person?
The third place person was a Democrat who endorsed me. And so, and got a lot of hate for it, just for endorsing an independent, even though we agreed on a whole lot. So, and it wasn't about, her doing what she believes in. They just said, how could you defy the party, which is just
Mm.
kind of political bossism. So it's frustrating, and it took a lot of courage for her. So I think she deserves a lot of respect for that, making a values driven choice. Um, so beyond that, which obviously are healthy numbers, we don't know. So we're just putting it all in the field, because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm gonna fight like an underdog regardless of, I'm not going to get complacent because if I had polling numbers, it either shows I'm behind, which means I need to work hard, or it shows I'm ahead, which means I risk getting complacent. So I might as well just pretend like I'm behind and fight hard.
I love it. I love it. You've been generous enough. You're going to stick around. Patreon members, we're going to bring back some extra content. So for our Patreon supporters, thank you for supporting the show. I'm going to ask Nick the car question and a couple of other of our great ones to commemorate our 300th episode, and also because it's fun and I don't do it enough. So if you're not a Patreon member, check out the website and do that now. Nick, before we wind up here, let me ask you the question I've asked all the candidates. You've got 30 seconds or a minute. You're talking to folks all across the country, whether they can vote for you or not. Why should folks support Nick Batter this election year?
Yeah, hopefully, if you can vote for me, please vote for me. And if you know anybody that lives in my part of Omaha, please reach out to them and encourage them to get informed. And I hope to be able to earn their vote. If you're looking to support a race, I will say, one, like many situated like me, I don't have a machine behind me. So it means that I have to do things on a shoestring budget. Um, Fortunately, knocking on a door is free. It takes time, but it's a lot cheaper than putting ads on TV. Um, so we run that way, and it means we can really stretch a dollar. So my first day canvassing, it was sleeting, it was still winter. I knocked on a door, left a card because nobody came down, and I got an email that night from a woman who says, I'm elderly, I'm retired, I live alone, I don't answer the door when, strange people knock, but I read what you left and I really liked it. And so I'm going to give you $10 a month. And so she's been giving us $10 a month since February. And anytime we make a spending decision in the campaign, the question my team knows this is we say, is this worth Mary's $10? And if it's not, we don't do it. So we will put it to good use. And really what I'm hoping will happen is that we will win, and that will show people that it's possible. I was told when I was thinking about running by seasoned state legislators that if you win as an independent in Nebraska, you will be very effective as a legislator, but you won't survive a primary. We've already proven them wrong, but if we make it all the way, I think it will show that it's possible for others, and that will really create a path for more people like me in Nebraska to come through, who I look forward to supporting.
Awesome. You're awesome. You're an outstanding leader. You're leading by example. I think you're the perfect guest for our 300th episode because you really show folks what's happening now this year, but also I think the true potential of this movement. I think you're the kind of guy who will inspire other people to run. And I hope you become a face of this movement and of this country because you're a great voice of reason. And you're an outstanding leader. I'm so grateful that you joined us on the show, Nick. Patreon members, look for the extra content after this. But Nick, we wish you the best of luck. I encourage everybody to support you in every way they can. You have my full endorsement and full support, and wish you all the best out there, man. Good luck and stay vigilant.
Well, thanks for including me. Thanks for finding me and elevating me, Paul. I really appreciate it. So thanks for all your hard work you're doing nationwide.
You got it. And Mary, I hope you're listening. Good. Your $10 is a good investment in Nick, and I hope others will follow your lead. So thank you, Mary, and thank you, everyone else. Stay vigilant.